Hey guys, it's Greg with By the Bootstraps, btbootstraps.com. Check out the store, check out the social media. Finally went and saw Tenet. So this is a movie review, or a perception, I should say. Don't usually make a lot of these, but for the first time in 6 months, we finally went to the theater. I think the last movie I saw in theaters was 1917, which was a fantastic movie. But then, one of my best friends was like, "Hey man, you want to go see Tenet?" I said, "Yeah, sure." It's been a long time since we've done anything like that, primarily because the theaters have been closed for no choice of our own. So we decided to go check this movie out. Gotta say, liked the movie. It was really good. It looked great, but there were some story elements there that didn't quite make a lot of sense. I know people say, "Oh, you don't understand the whole inversion of time and the back and forth and all that stuff," and that's not it. It's that for me, it didn't add up. Movie is a slow burn to begin with. It takes a long time to get into. The trailer sold it as like this action-packed, back and forth in time kind of thing. What they did in one section, they were going to do in another section. It's just going to be seen from different perspectives, and essentially, yeah, that's kind of what you get, really. But it's still, told really well. I mean, it's that whole entire Christopher Nolan section of filmmaking that he does, where he's, like with Inception and Memento and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, okay, I see where he's coming from. Oh, even Interstellar, actually, now I think about it. I see where he's coming from, except I don't think it paid off as well as it could have here. All the actors did a great job. Denzel Washington's kid, I forget his name at the moment. That Patterson guy, the Twilight Sparkle guy, he did a great job. Actually, surprisingly, really good job. The characters in and of themselves did a great job. The way it was shot, the film, like the way it looked, fantastic, which I would expect that from a Christopher Nolan film. But the sound design for me was just so off the mark. I mean, there was times where people were talking, particularly in the beginning of the movie, where things happened, where you could not hear or understand what was being said in the dialogue, except it was crucial, or I don't want to say it's crucial, but it was important dialogue. But you had all the gunfire in the background, the music that was swelling at the same time, and these guys were conversating, but they were in masses. It was like, I can't understand you. Kind of like in the real world, oddly. Anyway, we were watching that, and I remember I leaned over to my wife, because I went with my wife, my daughter, my buddy, and myself, and I leaned over to my wife. I'm like, "Did you catch what they said?" And she's like, I had no idea. So there could have been like some crucial information that was going on, but we don't know. Now, the idea of this movie was really interesting in the fact that they were using what they call an inversion, which means, in the explanation of the movie, events that were happening in the future were only happening because you allowed it to happen, or you did it, and so that if you were experiencing that, it was going back because of something you've already done previously. But they didn't show how, they did show, or at least they tried to explain that, but for me, as I was watching it, I'm going, yeah, but how could you do certain, like for example, they do this one thing where he puts his hand out and a bullet comes to his hand. He's like, "Well, how did the bullet come back to your hand?" And the lady goes, "No, you didn't catch the bullet, you dropped the bullet." Except they never showed him dropping the bullet, so how the hell could he possibly go back and get the bullet to come back if he never dropped it, at least from the sequence that we saw? So it's like either he went into time and future, dropped the bullet, went back into the past, and that's what he was seeing, or he dropped the bullet, went to the future, loaded it, and then went back to the past and did it again. But at the moment of that scene, he never had actually done it before. In fact, it was a new concept. It was like a completely different understanding. So there was a little bit of lack of understanding. Okay. The problem is in the movie that as you go further in the movie, there's more of those kind of sequences where they're trying to use the inversion, the time travel aspect, which is a cool concept, except it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's like, okay, how could you have done these things and seen these things if you weren't part of these things at that time? Except they're trying to say that at that time you were part of those things, you just did it in a different time spectrum. Okay? Now, and I'll let you guys watch the movie because I don't want to spoil it and anything like that, because I don't want to go like a scene by scene, but just watching it I was like, oh, that was very interesting. I think the concept was really good, except it wasn't pulled off, like the way they did it just didn't quite hit the mark as what I think they were going for. But the movie itself, when it comes to actors, I think the actors did a great job. When it comes to the visuals, I think they did a great job with the visuals. There's a fight sequence that you see early on and then it kind of comes back again in the end where you're like, oh, okay, so they show it on both sides of the spectrum. That again was really cool. But the thing is, by the time I saw that sequence that was redone for the second time in the movie, I knew exactly what was going on. And that's kind of the thing that disappointed me about the movie, is the fact that I knew too many things by just watching it that was going to happen. And then by the third act, it looks amazing. Visually, it looks cool. Sound-wise, they had toned it down. It looks cool. Story-wise, I get the elements of the story, but from a perspective, actual complementing the story to kind of tie all the ends together, it's like it was almost like it was forced. Like they had to get to the end to make sure that it made sense to the moviegoer. But unfortunately, I walked away, my wife walked away, my best friend walked away, and we knew what happened, but we're like, did that make sense to you? There's a whole entire end scene where it's a epic war battle, essentially. But the question is, who are they fighting? Because at no time when you're watching this did you see anyone of different sides shooting at each other. You just saw people who all looked the same doing this stuff, and things were happening. So that by the time it got done, it was like, what was the purpose of that? Like, I know what the main characters were trying to do in that sequence, but with everyone else, did it need to be so bang, bang, boom, boom, things exploding, coming back together, stuff like that? Like, I see the visual coolness of it and how it was like represented in the film. That was interesting, but what did it actually do for the story itself, to where it made sense if I was going to watch this, or you were going to watch this, or anyone else was going to watch this, outside of saying oh yeah, duh, I totally knew what was going to happen. Did you? But that's one element aside. The movie, I believe itself, in and of itself, is something you should watch. I will probably buy it on Blu-ray just because I'm a huge Nolan fan. I'll probably pick it up just like I did Interstellar, just like I did with the Batman trilogy and stuff like that, because I think he's one of those few directors who are out there who consistently at least challenges the ideas of seeing new things. He's not making remakes, he's not making redos or anything else. He's not making sequels for the most part. Although I think this is a movie he could make a sequel on, and it would be kind of cool. The same thing with Inception, but I guess we'll never get that. But I would like to see see how this world kind of goes a little bit further. Like, how did these characters come together? At least the way they explain it in the movie, which I won't say what they did and what they didn't do. It'd be kind of interesting to see that backstory open up and have a little bit more insight. It honestly might make this movie a little bit better. I'd say go see the movie for sure. Maybe even buy it if you wanted to. But that's actually not really the only thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about the experience of going back to the theaters for the first time in 6 months. Like I said, the last movie I saw in theaters with my wife and again my best friend and my dad at that point, we went and saw 1917. Fantastic movie. Enjoyed the hell out of it. Loved it a lot. I'm going to buy it here. I haven't bought it yet because I'm waiting for going on sale because I'm a cheap bastard. But we went and saw that movie, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought there were so many good things about that movie. But then there was this hiatus of a long time, and I'm not someone who goes to the movies very often personally because personal reasons. But we saw this movie, and it was interesting because it was like, wow, we're back in a theater. We have the ability to go back to a theater. But then the tone and the presence that I felt while going to the theater, although we were in the building, it kind of actually stole away some of the thunder of what the movie probably could have been. I think the movie probably could have been better, but it had nothing to do with the movie. It had to do with a lot of the fact that when you walked into the location, you had to wear a mask. When you went to the bathroom, you had to wear a mask. When you sat down in your seat, you had to wear a mask. The theater itself on a Saturday evening at 5 o'clock should have been maybe not packed, but pretty damn full, except it was empty. I think there was maybe 15 people in that theater, tops, and we were 4 out of the 15. It felt a completely different vibe going back into these places. I'm glad we could, but it almost makes me upset at the same time because it's like, oh, please, Governor Walz, can we have a little freedom? Just a little more, please? No. Okay, cool, I guess not. So I believe that this movie would have done better and could have done better and should have done better had you had that collective audience response, when something amazing happens on the screen, to get those, ooh, look at that, collectively as an audience, where instead it's almost like watching it from home except on a big ass screen. And it was a big ass screen, and I did enjoy it. but I'm more disappointed in the lack of like participation from other people because of the fact that we weren't allowed to have people. Maybe it might be from social distancing, maybe because people don't want to wear the mask, maybe because people, whatever. But there's like another thing in and of itself that doesn't make sense to me. It's like you have to wear a mask if you're sitting down in your chair, but if you buy concessions, popcorn, candy, whatever, drinks, you can take your mask down and you can eat it. Well, guess what we did? Like anyone else would do. I'm buying concessions so that I can eat my popcorn one kernel at a time to save me from having to put a mask on. I think that experience, because that's what this is, it's an experience. It's not just the movie itself, it's the experience of going to a movie. I think that experience maybe hinders this review or like my thoughts on this movie a little bit more so than what it probably would have done. I still think the movie in and of itself has some flaws. There's definitely some narrative questioning. There's a little bit of contradiction that happens in the movie. I don't want to say it out loud right now because I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen the movie, but there are some contradictions. It's still enjoyable. The first half of the act of the movie takes way too long to get going. They're doing so many backstory stories that are going on. This guy needs to go to here to get this thing, to go to this guy, to get this guy over here, to this thing, to get this guy, so he can end up here. There's way too much of that. But all in all, the second half of the movie, I think, is really good, except you have to throw a lot away. And then again, there's not like a clear understanding of the end act as to how it all ties together. Like, I know by watching it and seeing it, but I can understand where a lot of people would have some questions going, well, wait a minute, why did he have to do this to get here, to do this, to do this? I mean, there's seriously that. Anyway, it was still a good time, still a good movie. I recommend watching it. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you later.